Welcome to the Way She Leads podcast, where we integrate strategy, intuition, and real life leadership so that you can create impact with more joy and ease without pushing, proving, or burning yourself out. Hi, I'm Megan Akatu, former corporate leader turned transformational coach, and I help women feel fully alive in their purpose in a way that ripples out through every area of their lives. If you've ever felt like there is a better way, you are not wrong and you are not alone. Each episode brings you conversations with experts and real leaders sharing tangible and holistic practices to help you lead your life in a way that actually feels good, not just looks good on paper. Welcome in. Hi, today I'm here with Casey Carrion. Welcome to the podcast, Casey.
Hi, Megan.
So happy you're here. And Casey is a fractional head of people and culture in leadership and organizational development. Can you tell us a little bit about how you became the Casey of today?
Yeah. Wow. That's such a deep question. So, on a fun note, my mom is in the fashion industry and she worked from home for almost all of my childhood. And so I had this picture of like a woman, a mom who like loves her family, wants to be at all the soccer games, and has this really big, important job that she loves. And so going to school, I just always knew that I would find something that I love to do. And a lot of that is because I got to watch my mom really love her job, be very good at her job, and still love her family with her whole heart. And so, yeah, I currently live in Washington. I have 2 small children, a husband, and the work that I do is really helping people to expand who they are in their leadership. I love to work with organizations and people who want to define their values and really scale their people development and their culture. So I love working with organizations that are growing, that are fast-paced. And I get a lot of that from the way that I grew up, with parents that were super supportive, hardworking, generous, being an oldest daughter, if you have any of those listening. And the other things that have made me who I am today, probably, this sense of like being a bit of a seeker. I grew up always wanting to understand the answers, always wanting to see a miracle, always wanting to achieve and get to the next level from this deep internal inspiration. And so that's really driven me quite a bit throughout my life to find an awesome partner, to have a career that I love, to have 2 beautiful young children, and to really be able to do it all and have it all. So it's a little bit about me.
I love that even from such a young age, you had such beautiful picture of possibility in your mom having that balance of doing something that she loved and then also being around. I would imagine that not a lot of people grew up specifically with that image and then how much possibility that's created for you and what you wanted to build.
Totally. Yeah, she was in freelance even. So she was a small business owner and incredibly creative. And so I did get that picture of getting to have it all. My mom didn't sleep much. So if there's anyone on the podcast that isn't sleeping much, you're in good company. And, she did understand what her priorities were in her life and was able to really go after them and get them. And that's something that I've learned from her.
I wanted to share how we know each other and what I appreciate about you. And Casey is a senior leader within Lightyear Leadership, which is my leadership's coaching school. And Casey is one of the deepest listeners I have ever met in my entire life. And you might say, well, okay, thanks, Megan. What does that mean? And it helps her be so strategic. So Casey can really listen from this place that is so grounded and so possibility focused that then when she works with individuals or organizations, like she just pulls things out. And I'm like, how did you know to do that? And it's because she's such a deep listener, but it also makes sense of you can create this possibility because you also had that modeled for you. And so I love how all that ties together.
Thanks, Megan. It's been so fun to work with you and to see you really step into your purpose. It's very, very rewarding and inspiring, and I'm so happy to be here today.
We're gonna have so much fun. So when a decision gets made above you and you don't agree with it, and Casey, can you tell us about a story that happened to you in your early career?
Yeah. So the story that I'll share today was a really huge learning for me as a young leader. And so I was in an organization, fast moving tech organization, and I deeply disagreed with a decision that they were making. And I didn't have what we call decision making rights. Like, I wasn't the one that got to call the shots. That was not in my role responsibility. Now, I did feel like I was an expert in the place they were making decisions. I felt like I had lived experience. I felt like I had strategic analysis. I felt like I had, job experience in that area. And the one that really was responsible for making policy and generating policy at that time in my career. And so I really became pretty stuck, like I would shut down in meetings. I became a pretty angry version of myself, I'll offer. Like what I was feeling was that people weren't listening to me, that they were doing it wrong, that my lived experience didn't matter, that they were giving lip service to this big initiative they had that they'd been very public about and weren't really backing it up with statistical decision making, database decision making. And I really felt like I knew better. And so I got into this place where rather than being able to lead from my authentic self or lead from a purpose or lead from a place of compassion, of inspiration, I was very, very angry. And I would say, y'all, like, I was probably stuck for a solid 5 months. Like, and if
Oh,
we
wow.
look at, yeah, if we look at, how that could impact someone's career, I would offer that I was likely passed over for promotions that for jobs I could have done because I wasn't being a team player. I thought that I was and really fighting for what I believed in. And the truth was that because I was so angry, I so was not myself. I actually couldn't really work in a way that was effective. I couldn't lead because I couldn't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
I was just so focused on how stuck and angry I was that I couldn't see beyond that.
Yeah. And what were you making the organization be in that moment or individuals within that organization? It feels like you were right over here and they were wrong over there. And so what were you making them be?
Yeah, like, so I really was creating an us versus them dynamic in a way that was pretty pronounced and probably I didn't have to do. So it was, what was I making the organization be? I definitely had a story. I had a story in my mind about who the organization was, who the decision makers were. And part of it was like, they're inauthentic, they're saying something and they're doing something else, they're out of integrity. I had a pretty strong sense of judgment because I was hurt. I was really hurt and I was frustrated. And I didn't at that time, in that moment, have the tools I needed to be able to make a difference or even understand that I was stuck, right? There have
Mhm.
been times in my life where I just didn't even know how stuck I was until I got out of it. And then I was like, oh, wow, that was a lot.
Yes. Yes. How did you get yourself out of that place after you'd been there for 5 months?
That's a great question. So there were two things that happened. The first was that my boss had a really tough conversation with me. And she was like, look, it feels like you're undermining me in front of our team, and that's not going to work. She had a really
Yeah.
tough conversation with me that I deeply respected. Of course, I cried after, you
Yeah.
know, and I didn't understand the impact of my actions at that time, at that
Right.
age, at that point in my career. I just really felt like I was fighting for what was right. So that was one thing that happened where it took someone to say the truth. It took someone to tell me the truth. And I deeply respect that. The other thing that happened was I started working with Suzanne Conrad of Lightyear Leadership. And one of the things she taught me was a principle called choice partnered with decision liberates. So this is something that Megan knows deeply, is that when someone else makes a decision that impacts me and has me feel out of choice or stuck, resentful, any of those things, I have the responsibility to make a new choice, right? So I have the responsibility to change the circumstance for myself. And so learning that principle and then also getting that feedback gave me a sense of empowerment to be able to see more possibility. So to be able to really listen for, why was I angry? How could I fix that? How could I show up as myself? Did I need to find another job? Was I so out of alignment with this decision and the impact on me and the impact on my team that I needed to find something else? And when I was angry, I didn't see any of those as possibilities. So those two things really helped me to shift.
Can you walk us through, because on the surface, I feel like it can feel scary to be like, this was a decision that affected me in a place where I had some expertise. I feel like I was disrespected. And now understanding I can choose how I show up and how I choose to see the situation, even if I don't agree with it. But that can still feel like a really big jump.
Totally.
So what helped you navigate? I'm angry. I feel like I was slighted, to, what I can actually change how either my actual behavior or how I'm speaking about the situation or how I'm appearing in meetings. Can you walk us through what you had to do in order to get to the other side?
Totally. So the first thing I did, Megan and y'all, it's not the most sexy thing, but what I really needed to do was forgive myself and forgive the people in my organization that I felt were making a mistake. So this is where I was able to separate my strong recommendation for this area of expertise with what was actually happening and the people who were doing it. So this is where I really got to separate, I'll say, the person from the result, or the organization from the action. And I forgave it. And forgiveness is such a funny thing to talk about. It's a funny thing to talk about in organizations. It can sound kind of soft. And what I'll offer is that one of the ways that I've learned about forgiveness from Louise Hay and these other people is that it's a letting go, right? It's a letting go. It's a release. It's not condoning. It's simply saying that's not my thing to carry. That resentment, that anger, it's not mine to carry. And that person's got their own thing going on. And so I can release it. So when I was able to forgive the other people, I then looked at okay, I can forgive myself, I can forgive myself for being ineffective, for, thinking I was right, for fighting, all of these things that I was doing. And that helped me to connect to my purpose, right? And when I was able to see my purpose as a leader, as who I wanted to show up as, then I could make the leap to, okay, great. This is a situation that I don't have direct decision-making rights for. What can I do? What can I do? How can I show up so that the things that are important to me, the values that are important to me, are still represented in my work, even if they're not valued at a greater scale? And then from there, I was able to make a new decision.
And what were some of these decisions you made when you decided that you did have power and how the situation was unfolding? What behaviors changed?
Well, the first thing I did was align. So we talk about how alignment doesn't have to mean agreement. I intentionally got on board. And that can feel like a giving up for some people to get into alignment when they've been fighting for so long. But for me, it was really about, how can I be a better leader for the people that I've been hired to lead? And kind of like when parents are arguing, it's not great for the kids. When a leader is out of alignment with an organization, it's not great for their team. And so me being able to accept that I didn't have the power to make choices around this initiative helped me to become a better leader for my team. And I had to choose that. I had to decide it, because I could have just stayed angry and bitter.
Yeah. Yeah. And for you, how do you know the line? So let's say a decision gets made above you. The people above you have the decision-making rights. And so in one way, as you've explained, you can let that be. They have the decision-making rights, and I'm going to choose how I show up, or how I support the decision, or how I don't go around complaining about it, whatever, however that looks on the back end. Or where you're like, no, I really, really disagree with this decision. For someone who really, in their bones, feels like this is not correct, what would you suggest to that person? What would you suggest that they do, and also stay in this possibility that you were speaking of?
That's such a good question. And it can really shift situation to situation. I had the privilege where, if I was so out of alignment that I needed to quit my job, I could have done that. And I know that's not a reality for many people. And so I do want to say, though, that can be an option.
Yes.
And people often feel stuck. They often feel well, I can't quit my job because they'll win or, and then they stay in a job and make themselves sick and,
Yeah.
hurt their team. And it's a downward spiral. And so I do want to offer that if someone can see a possibility of finding a new position, they could do that if they're in complete disagreement and unalignment with the decision that's being made that affects them or, in the company. And, it doesn't have to be like I'm leaving today unless it
Yeah.
has to be that. Like a
Yeah.
person can start to then look for something else, do their job well while they're looking for something else, right? Like they can have the two things working together so that they can launch into a new possibility, find another job, start their own company, whatever they want to do
Right.
while completing their work well and be in integrity there. Of course, you can follow all the channels of giving your feedback, trying to get in front of the correct person to give that feedback. And I'm assuming though that someone's already done that if they're at a place where they're
Okay.
like, I totally don't agree. So I like to make sure people have more than two choices. So let's kind of list them out. Right. So one
Yeah.
is that they quit today.
Yeah.
Another is that they look for something else while completing their work well, if they feel like they can do that. The third could be to find a purpose in aligning, even if for a
Mm.
short time
Mhm.
you know? And I'm sure there's many more possibilities, but those are the three that really come to mind for me. If it's not like a legal issue, there's all kinds
Yeah.
of things we can
Yes.
do to move the puzzle pieces around. And really, we can only do that in an effective way from our purpose, our own sense of leadership. Like I couldn't have done that staying stuck and angry.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you tell us so then your boss pulled you aside and had this very honest and open conversation with you, which felt like it was an aha moment for you. Can you tell us then what happened over the long run as you began to then align with, okay, this is the decision and I'm choosing to show up as this leader and being there for my team and supporting this decision. What happened? What happened next for you?
Yeah. So the balance of my time with that company was a positive outcome I'll offer. I had burned some bridges. And so there was some repair that I chose to do. I almost said needed, but like
Yeah.
I didn't need to. We don't ever need to do anything. So I chose to do some repair. And then my team is one of my values again.
Yeah.
And so when I was told in no uncertain terms, like, you're not really being a team player, I really was like, oh, like, I want to adjust. Like, I was working
Yeah.
so hard. I totally thought I was a team player. And so what I did was I really focused my efforts on things that would drive the greater team forward. So like our district or our area. And I focused on what I could do. And so I repaired relationships by asking forgiveness, by showing up for people with different perspectives than me. I worked really hard for my boss and, to repair that relationship, led my team really well, supported my peers. I did end up getting, recognized for, I won, some awards within our
Oh,
company. And, it all came from letting go of this resentment. Like I needed to do that in order to be successful. And so the balance of my time, I would say, was a highlight of my career. Like I really saw the type of leader I could be when I was more focused on my purpose and less focused on the things that I needed to fight to make better.
yes. Yes. And I love that so much because we speak pretty often on this podcast about how do we move away from pushing and proving, like proving that you were right, proving that you know more, and then how you're then aligning back to purpose. And what specifically were you there to do? What was part of your purpose within that organization?
And my purpose within the organization was to demonstrate compassionate leadership that really gets stuff done.
Yeah.
Like it's this balance of leadership between caring for your team, loving your people, and also holding them accountable, to extremely high results, to excellent results. That's what I really felt like my purpose was and why I kind of got caught in that cycle of
Mhm.
the proving and the rightness. And so, when I was able to really see, okay, what I'm really here to do is bring this level of excellence that's partnered with compassion. I was able to be that person all the time, not just with my team that I was managing, but with this bigger organization and my bigger leadership impact. Yeah. And, when I look back at that 20-something-year-old, I have so much compassion for them too. Like, this was probably a really huge lesson, like one of my first big lessons in the leadership dynamics of an organization and how to navigate
Yes.
it in a successful way and stay myself. I didn't
Right.
have to become someone else to be effective. Actually, when I became more myself, I was more recognized for the work that I did.
That's it right there. You were already excellent, and it was allowing that excellence to shine instead of the anger
Yeah,
to come through.
totally.
Yeah. I love what you said about taking care of your team and also serving the larger organization. If I even reflect upon my own career, I felt like I was always very strong at taking really, really good care of my
Mm,
team. And I can also see the places where I was fighting with people above me. And I love how you frame that of just how important both are. That
yeah,
yes, we want to take care of our people, make sure they have the resources, make sure they're getting the decisions and the resources that they need. And by not holding on to this rightness or the I know more, then it also allows us to be team players up as well.
totally. Yeah, like when we're all on the same team, it's a lot more effective. And so what I
Yes.
heard from you is a little bit of what I was experiencing, where like the powers that be are the other team, when really if we can all align to the same purpose, even in disagreement, we're a much more powerful team. And then you, Megan, get to be a more powerful, more impactful leader because you're positively influencing more people.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes it feels like, oh, I need to fight or advocate so hard for my people that, I don't know, tension going up almost feels natural because you're like, oh, but I'm doing this for my people. Like I could really justify why I was doing that.
Totally. Yeah, if we could just expand the definition of my people,
Yeah.
like, it would be so much more effective. That's
Right.
even true with my family. One of the things I tell my husband when I get tunnel vision and, like, we gotta get this stuff
Yeah.
done, like,
Yes.
when I get tunnel vision, I have him tell me, like, "Same team." Like,
Yeah.
"Same team, Casey." Because it's easy for me to be like an us versus them, like, it's a
Right.
natural defense mechanism for me. True for me at home, that's true for me in organizations, and it's something that has been a huge learning for me and a growth curve, definitely, and I'm really grateful. I'm grateful to have learned the lesson. I'm grateful to that manager who gave me that feedback because I don't know how quickly I would have grown without that feedback. Like I don't know that
Yes.
I didn't understand the impact of what I was doing. So it's a huge nod to the people who are willing to have those honest conversations and hold people accountable. It's one of the most important things that we can do to develop our people.
Absolutely. You and I we could go off on feedback right now because I speak on feedback all the time about exactly what you said, how important it is. It's actually, I find most people don't do it well because they're scared. So even when you were sharing that story about your boss coming to you, that took a lot of courage on her part to say,
Absolutely.
I feel like you're undermining me like that. I mean, that's like shot to the gut right there. Right. And she was also probably actually feeling that. So, I mean, at that time to like be able to explain that to you that clearly, it felt like that was enough for you to be like, you know what? This is not how I'm trying to show up. That takes a lot of courage.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful to her. If you can imagine, she needed to come to a scary person to give them feedback. Not somebody who's underperforming, but like actually a high performing
Right.
person who has having a negative impact on culture. And so I was able to really take that experience of being the one that was negatively impacting people and develop some philosophy and some people development around how to have managers have those conversations. When we have a high performing teammate who has a negative impact on culture, it's one of the most dangerous things for a team because
Yes.
people start to look to them and say, that's how you perform. That's how you
Uh-huh.
succeed. And so managers, it's so important for them to have that courage, that sense of purpose, that dedication to their team to be able to have that conversation so that they can scale the correct culture and not the culture that's getting rewarded because the person is the scariest.
Right. High performing and the scariest. Right. It's that accountability. We need to go address this with that person. Yes, I feel this deeply in my bones because I can think of so many examples when that hasn't been addressed and you are correct. It really erodes the morale.
Yeah.
As you move through As you move through your career, do you have another instance where you also did not have the decision-making rights, but you could move through this cycle faster? And what
Mm.
happened there?
The instances aren't coming up right away, Megan, and it's likely because I have this practice now of understanding what my rights are, what they aren't, who makes the final call, am I that person? That's actually one of the things, the practices that I use. So whenever I'm onboarded into a new project, as somebody who does fractional work, this is super important. Whenever I'm onboarded into a new project, contract, I lay all of this out right at the top. Like, what do I
Uh-huh.
have decision-making rights over? What do I have creative freedom over? What's a system you want to stay in place? What's a system you want to improve? Who are the people I'm going to be managing? Having the conversations with them about decision making rights, who has the final call on projects. So, one of the things that I learned from this experience was how to lay all that out really cleanly. I was hired to design from Lightyear Leadership and another brands to help them design their leadership development framework. And
Mhm.
so I had this whole picture of the most effective way to do that. And I think it would have been excellent. And
Of course it would have been. You
I
came
present,
up with it.
and then the person that was my point of contact in that contract was like, "Oh, that's not our language at all." And I was like, "Okay, cool. We can adjust the language." And it was that they wanted they actually had a different picture of what they wanted, and so rather than try to convince them that, like, a picture was the best picture, I was able to listen it, and align much faster because it wasn't about trying to have my program be the program. It was really about delivering an excellent leadership framework, and we did. It's a multi-year contract. We're in year 2. It really does have the DNA of the company on it because we were able to co-create and collaborate,
Mhm.
co-labor together. So I am able to just see it faster now. And
Yes.
because I don't need to fight about it, I get better results. I have better work and
Yes.
better relationships.
Yes. Yes. Well, and that's a beautiful example from the introduction of, like, how your deep listening then supports the strategic output of what they wanted, and now you are co-creating what works best for them and you. When you were speaking about how do we move from this anger and then get back into possibility, how do you for yourself know when you're in alignment, when you're out of alignment, and how do you get back into that place of choice so that you can generate more possibilities of how you want to show up?
Yeah, you're so good at this, Megan. Is a deep, long-standing practice of understanding when I'm not myself, right? I think that's
Yeah.
the question you asked, like, how do
Yeah.
I know when I'm not myself? And so, in our body of work, in the Lightyear body of work, we talk about how the body is innately intelligent. Our body is always talking to us. And especially you layering in your breathwork practice is really dynamic. So I know very quickly when I'm not myself. And I often get kind of hot headed. I get tunnel vision, literally feel like I have earmuffs on. Like I feel like my
Oh, wow. Yeah.
listening is muffled, just like this.
Yeah.
I usually have kind of a knot in my throat. I get the shoulder earrings. Like my body is very loud about this immediate response to like, no, it's a fight or flight, whatever it is. My body is like,
Yeah.
nope.
Yeah.
And the challenge is when I stay in that state for a prolonged period of time, it then becomes normal. Right? So if I'm angry about something for a long period of time, I don't recognize when my voice is short, when I'm not listening. And so the practice for me is really understanding those body sensations, those cues early so that I can correct them or so that I can correct my perspective, whatever's having me be in that kind of reactivated state, fight or flight state, so that I don't then think it's normal to be angry or
Mm,
frustrated or whatever, X, Y, and Z.
mm. Beautiful. What do you know now that you didn't know in 20-something-year-old Casey?
Like an infinite number of things, In this scenario, what I know is that either way, I'm okay.
Yes.
Like whether or not people recognize me for my work, whether or not they hear that my perspective is valuable, whether or not my boss tells me I'm undermining her, whether or not, all of those things, like the sense back then that I wasn't sure that I would be okay deep
Mm,
down. And so I had this drive to need that validation And what I know now is that what we appreciate increases in value. The more I appreciate myself, the more I self-validate, the less I need to prove. I know this is a theme for your people and you and me. And so when I know that I'm okay either way, you can just hear the lightness. I have so much more access to creativity, compassion, all of the things that I really stand for in my leadership and who I want to be as a human. So that's what I know and
Yeah.
continue to learn.
Yes, always. And when you know that you're going to be okay either way, does that also help you see, I have the decision-making rights, I don't have them in this situation, and I'm still going to be okay?
Mm, totally. It's this deep sense of knowing that things will work out, that like me as a person, I'm a good person, I'm okay. It helps with all kinds of clarity, how to ask the correct question, how to disagree from a place of compassion and understanding. It doesn't mean that I am a doorknob. I know I talked about getting in alignment in that
Yeah.
situation that I shared here. It doesn't mean that we have to, it just means that it's a possibility. And so, absolutely, having that sense of knowing I'm okay either way, that sense of unattachment, it gives me
Mhm.
access to just infinite more possibilities.
Yes. And even as you were just speaking about accessing creativity, but it also feels like you're really going through a structured process in order to have the end results be more positive for both you and the organization where you could bring more creativity. So,
I mean, so you see my little things here.
yes, I
I
love
So they're collages for those of you listening.
yes.
I love having structure as a means for creativity. So I don't know that this works for every human. And for me, I love having a basket. I love having boundaries. I love having a budget. I really love having the edges defined for me
Mhm.
that I can generate the highest result from those edges. That's one of the reasons why I love collage. I don't go
Yeah.
take the pictures. I find the pictures
Yeah.
and then I pull them out and I put them together. And it's one of the reasons why I love working in teams of people because people naturally will bring an edge. They'll
Yeah.
bring a no, they'll bring a boundary. I really access creative freedom or what you would call flow through structure and edges.
It's something I've been exploring more recently, kind of bristle with structure. And I'm actually finding that when I invite more structure in, it is more supportive, very similar to what you're saying. That like I almost need the sandbox, I need the edges of the sandbox so I can go play in the middle. And
Yeah.
I'm working on being more comfortable with actually putting up the walls of the sandbox.
I mean, it's so fair. Like, have you found that sometimes structure leads to rigidity?
It's more about committing to the structure, like actually
Mm.
saying, I'm going to put up like the little 2x4 plank.
Oh, yeah.
I almost don't want to commit because it's, I almost want to know what's going to happen before I do it. So it's like, I'm not sure that anything creative is going to come out from inside the sandbox. So why should
Yes.
I commit to the structure to
Mm.
build the 2x4s in the first place, to build the square? And then what I'm realizing is it's almost like if I build it, it will come. So it's like putting in that structure first. And so it's something that I've been exploring more recently and being more open to building the
Totally.
structure first.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. What I'm hearing you say, Megan, is that you're actually committing to your own creativity. Like you're
Yes.
committing to believing that you can
Yeah.
generate
Yes. That's
rather
perfect.
than jump
Yes.
to the next sandbox because you're like, I don't
Yeah.
know if I like the
Yeah.
sand here. Like you're like, I can make it work. And I love that because structure can be really challenging for people for lots of reasons. Like some people feel like it leads to too much rigidity. They don't want to do that because then they have to do it that way every
Yeah.
time. And then for you, it's about what if I don't like this thing and what if I want to do this other thing? And so for me, like whenever people resist structure a bit, I just let them know they can always change their mind.
Yes.
Like we can always commit to something and then shift. And there's going to be consequences to that, like in any commitment that we change. And, I love at 6 a.m., I have a date for myself to go move Monday through Friday. Sometimes it's this class, sometimes it's this class. But like when I have the commitment, I'm more apt to follow through. And also, I like to leave myself some flexibility. Like I don't actually book the class because I don't want to pay the $20 if I don't want to go to that class. I want to go to a different one. So it's that both and. I feel like having the both and mentality can really support people rather than this kind of, well, I have
Mhm.
to.
That's so powerful. So you're committed to moving early in the morning, but you are in choice about what that movement will look like day by day.
Yeah, totally. It's like how
It's
I
beautiful.
meal plan for a week, and then any day that week I can choose, from this plan of 7
Yes.
meals. Like, because I also like having the choice to change my mind. And I'm not always successful, and I know that the structure supports me.
Is that something that you always knew, or did you have to learn that?
Yeah. So I would say I started as a kid very fluid. I was a high achieving student, but I was more nonlinear and then became very rigid as I went through school and then into young adulthood. And when that no longer worked for me because I was a human, I needed to heal from that
Yeah.
drill sergeant-y thing and had my own rebellion, hated structure, don't box me in, whatever that was. And then came to this moment, kind of like we're talking about with feedback, like the kindest thing is to put the structure in place that has some flexibility. Like
Yes.
when I'm no longer rebelling against myself, I have more freedom.
Yes.
So I would say it was an evolution and, it'll likely continue to evolve. That's one of
Yeah.
the beauties of being a person.
Can I ask you a few quick fire questions? Okay. What does feminine leadership mean to you?
Feminine leadership to me is really about a wholeness. It's about bringing all of the parts of me to the work that I do and respecting all of the things about me, like the softness, the dedication, the ability to generate and create. Like those are all things that are very feminine to me. And so feminine leadership is about bringing all of those aspects to the table and not fragmenting myself because I think that people want to see this one element of a person who gets stuff done.
Beautiful. What is the Casey secret sauce?
I guess it's listening.
I feel like that was so evident through this whole podcast. So I agree. What are you reading or listening to right now?
Oh my gosh, a million things.
Me too.
Uh, the one I just finished though is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Fast read, highly recommend. And then of course on the other side, I'm listening to Super Communicators right now, which is also very
What?
good. Recommend it,
Yes,
but I'm very passionate about fiction.
me too. I also have super communicators sitting by my bed. Haven't started that one yet.
It's an easier listen, I think, than it is a read.
Thank you so much for your time, Casey. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Megan. It was so fun. I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much for listening. Do you want to make better decisions without overthinking? Grab the decision making framework and move out of pressure and indecision and into clarity, confidence, and forward action. DM me on Instagram at Megan Akatu, the word decision, and it's all yours. Have a great day. Bye bye.